Headless Range, Dead Men Valley, Funeral Range. These aren't folklore. They're official geographic labels given to a single river canyon in Canada's Northwest Territories. In 1908, the remains of two Métis brothers were recovered from this wilderness. They'd gone in searching for gold. What happened to them became the foundation of a legend. But after nearly a century of retelling, separating what's actually documented from what was invented may be the deeper mystery. The South Nahanni River carves through one of the most isolated wilderness regions in North America, a place where sheer limestone cliffs rise nearly 1,000 meters above the water. While colloquial stories popularize the term Headless Valley, Canada's official cartographers slowly standardize the region's ominous map labels, like Headless Creek and Funeral Range, during a mid-century naming process. These stark identifiers grew out of actual gold rush-era disappearances, where help was weeks away. Yet these official names do not validate the wild rumors of curses or hidden tribes. Instead, they stand as permanent markers of a very real wilderness hazard, leading back to where the mystery truly began. In the early years of the 20th century, Métis prospectors Willie and Frank McLeod traveled into the unexplored Nahanni country, drawn by the northern gold rush. The brothers reportedly believed they had found a promising deposit and returned to the sheer canyons to continue searching. They never came back. By 1908, their brother Charlie organized a search party and headed into the wilderness, eventually locating two skeletons along a flat stretch of riverbank, now known as Dead Men Valley. While the disappearance and the recovery of these remains represent the secure historical core of the mystery, the actual state of the discovery scene remains a point of sharp disagreement. Early reports and subsequent retellings vary wildly, offering conflicting descriptions of the campsite and diverging on whether both skeletons were unquestionably found without their skulls. This fundamental uncertainty, rather than clear forensic evidence, allowed the grim discovery to anchor a century of legends. The tragedy quickly transformed into a search for motive. Later accounts linked the deaths to a wealthy gold deposit, focusing heavily on the brothers' missing companion, Robert Weir. According to these unverified stories, the party had sent a letter claiming they found a vein of pure gold, and Weir supposedly resurfaced in British Columbia carrying $8,000 in heavy nuggets. Yet official mineral registers from the era contain no record of any mining claim filed by the McLeods or Weir. No official inventory or police records confirm this wealth ever existed. While robbery or interpersonal violence remains a plausible explanation, no specific attacker was ever identified. Instead, the rumor of a hidden fortune took on a life of its own, drawing a steady stream of heavily armed prospectors back into the treacherous canyons, desperate to locate the legendary Lost McLeod mine. In 1917, a Swiss prospector named Martin Jorgensen established a log cabin near the Flat River, searching for his own share of northern gold. Within a few years, searchers found the cabin burned to its foundations, with Jorgensen's skeletal remains resting in the ashes. While popular retellings eventually claimed his body was recovered headless, no surviving police, coroner, or inquest records exist to verify this grim detail. The fire itself could represent a fatal accident, a violent assault, or the work of animal scavengers, with later writers sharpening the ambiguous discovery to fit a narrative. Instead of a documented crime, the case became the first major event used to argue that the valley's dangers were part of a deliberate, recurring pattern. In 1928, searchers reportedly discovered the remains of a prospector known as Yukon Fisher, though some accounts date the find to 1927. The circumstances of his death remained unverified. During the 1930s, trappers William Epier and Joseph Mulholland vanished. Investigators later located their burned cabin on Glacier Lake, but found no human remains. In 1945, Ontario miner Ernest Savard was found dead in his sleeping bag along the Flat River, bearing severe neck injuries. Yet subsequent reports contested the identity of the body, leaving the victim's true name in doubt. These cases varied wildly in documentation and physical evidence. By the late 1940s, newspapers began grouping these separate tragedies together, presenting them as a single, connected mystery. This media coverage transformed the Nahanni watershed into Canada's legendary Valley of Vanished Men. Long before gold seekers arrived, this territory was the home of the Dene. They knew the South Nahanni as Nahadehe, the river of the Na people, where archaeological evidence places human activity back at least 4,000 years. Dene oral history speaks of the Naha, a mountain-dwelling people who traveled from the high peaks to raid lowland communities. In one traditional account, Dene warriors tracked the raiders back to their camp, only to find the settlement mysteriously empty. Decades later, prospectors and journalists took this oral history and transformed it, inventing stories of headhunters, curses, and supernatural guardians that bear no resemblance to authentic Dene tradition. Early explorers returned from the subarctic canyons with reports of a phenomenon that seemed to defy the brutal northern winters: pockets of lush green growth thriving in the snow. This was not a supernatural refuge, but a geological reality. Far beneath the earth, water is heated by geothermal activity and forced to the surface. At Rabbit Kettle, the springs maintain a constant temperature of 20 degrees Celsius year-round. Further downstream, the waters of Crouse Hot Springs reach 32 degrees. The rising steam and sulfur-rich water create localized microclimates where delicate ferns and mosses flourish against the sub-zero cold. These measurable features, rather than a hidden tropical kingdom, fuel the enduring myth of a warm oasis valley hidden in the frozen north. Beyond the localized warmth of the hot springs lies a geology of brutal scale. The South Nahanni River forces its way through First Canyon, where sheer limestone walls compress the churning water, leading directly toward the sudden 92-meter drop of Virginia Falls. Navigating this river corridor means confronting powerful Class 3 and 4 rapids, traversing highly isolated valleys, and enduring sudden, sub-zero storms outside expected seasons. This is also active grizzly country. Before the era of reliable aviation, a stranded traveler was hundreds of kilometers from the nearest medical help. An overturned canoe, a sudden fall, a disabling injury, or starvation could quietly end a journey. Once a traveler succumbed, the wilderness itself erased the evidence. Forest fires, seasonal floodwaters, and years of animal scavenging would systematically scatter bones and destroy camp materials. By the time search parties reached the remote area, a completely natural tragedy would easily look like a staged murder scene where the physical evidence had been forever compromised. To evaluate the mystery of the South Nahanni, the historical record must be divided into three distinct categories: events documented or contemporaneously reported, accounts later retold with incomplete support, and purely folkloric or sensational claims. The theory of robbery over rumored gold claims or interpersonal violence remains a plausible explanation for some deaths. Yet violence cannot account for every disappearance where no crime scene survived. Falls, drowning, exposure, starvation, and accidental cabin fires remain strong competing explanations. Once a traveler died, wilderness scavengers could easily disperse remains, creating the false impression of a deliberate human attack. In other cases, simple misidentification likely attached one person's death to another name. No single killer, organized group, or supernatural force has ever been established as responsible for the deaths. In fact, official police records list far fewer mysterious deaths than the expansive lists published in popular media. Instead, a handful of genuine tragedies became magnified as later writers repeatedly recycled the same unverified sources, creating the illusion of independent confirmation. The evidence shifts the central question. Rather than asking who committed a series of calculated murders, the focus turns to how separate, unexplained wilderness accidents were assembled into a national legend. In 1947, journalist Pierre Berton led an expedition into the Northwest Territories, seeking the rumored Warm Valley and sending syndicated dispatches that captured the national imagination. His newspaper reports, alongside Raymond M. Patterson's popular wilderness memoirs from the 1930s to the 1950s, established the river as a perilous adventure frontier. Between 1947 and 1948, Time magazine formalized this framing, writing that the legend of Nahanni started with the two McLeod brothers 40 years ago, and that their bodies were found, reportedly, without heads. This national circulation of the phrase Headless Valley bound separate tragedies and disappearances into a single, immortal mystery. Decades later, federal and international bodies stepped in. The Canadian government established the Nahanni National Park Reserve in 1972, expanding it in 1976, while UNESCO granted World Heritage status in 1978. These formal designations preserve the physical canyons and thermal springs that form the story's setting, without validating its supernatural claims. The result is a lasting boundary where verified wilderness dangers and nearly a century of media embellishment remain permanently fused. Today, the Nahanni remains as unforgiving as ever. The enduring mystery isn't what stalked those lost prospectors, but why we prefer the comfort of a curse over the cold, brutal indifference of the wild. Some secrets are safer kept in the dark. Tell us your thoughts below.